a groundbreaking tool from Microsoft. I've tried to pitch this presentation like an intermediate level. So if there's some stuff that goes off over your head, maybe stop me, or I've given quite extensive links at the end of this talk in the form of a LinkedIn article, so that should help. So yeah, so what is Fabric? What is Microsoft Fabric? It's a software as a service data lakehouse solution, which includes Synapse data warehousing, Synapse data engineering, data factory, Synapse data science, real-time analytics, and Power BI. So yes, let's go on to the next. So yeah, a bit about myself. I'm a consultant, developer, architect, and trainer and publisher with my own consultancy, Innovative Business Intelligence Ltd. 25 years in data management and analytics. I'm a Power BI author, trainer, and public speaker. 22 plus thousand followers on LinkedIn, and I've passed 18 plus Microsoft focused exams. So that's going to feed into this talk as well, because Microsoft Fabric is changing all the time. It's been changing this week. So yeah, I'm really a massive advocate on the Microsoft Learn and certification process as well. Okay, so switch to the article. Oh, where's it gone? Just bear with me.
Still sharing a screen, Kieran?
Yeah, sorry, I just lost the article. It just disappeared, and I'm just bringing it back now. I'll be a few more seconds, I think. Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so just talking about a journey towards Fabric. So yeah, so it's a journey because Fabric's not in production yet, but it will be hopefully by the end of this year. It will be a revolutionary product because it will empower citizens, developers to leverage data lakehouse, data engineering, data science, and machine learning tools with far less dependency on IT infrastructure expertise. I mean, that's something that's stopped me from really making a difference in a lot of contracts I've had as an independent IT consultant, because you really need that relationship with your IT infrastructure to implement a data lakehouse. If you don't have it, or they don't have the right skills, then it does create an issue. But so Microsoft Fabric will step change that process and to democratize data within any organization. So yeah, just cover the structure, target audience of this article, of this talk. So probably need to ask a few questions, and if Matt could count a show of hands with some questions. So because I need to judge my target audience in terms of who, what detail I'm going to go into stuff, what should I gloss over. I don't want to overload people, and I don't want to teach people how to suck eggs at the same time. So can you give a show of hands where you're only interested in using Power BI or Fabric to create, maintain tactical departmental based data analytics solutions? Could I have a show of hands to that question, please? And then Matt, if you could enter that number of hands in the chat, that'd be great.
Got 6.
Okay, Okay, that's cool. So how many in there? How many there in total?
We have about 30 people, 35.
Oh, okay, yeah. 6 out of 30. Okay. It's good to know. Thank you. Using Power BI to create and maintain enterprise-based data analytic solutions where you share data across data sources such as a SQL Server database. Show of hands for that, please.
9.
9, okay. You're a business intelligence developer or you use Power BI every day.
$13.
Okay. How about you're a data engineer or an architect? Sorry?
Let's say 6.
6, okay. Okay, so I probably need to expand the data engineering terms a bit more, maybe less, so with the Power BI. Okay, so that's cool. Right. Yeah, so let's just go through this architecture. So I mean, I've basically got this from the got this piece here from the default Microsoft material, learning material. So if you just and maybe some of these terms here might be going above some people's heads, and I've spent a lot of time trying to distill the information down into manageable chunks, and so I think it's probably worthwhile that I just explain what each of these terms are, quite quickly. So, basically, Fabric is a software as a service data lakehouse solution, and really need to label what software as a service is in a bit more in a future section. Okay, so yeah, your data sources. So yeah, I mean, if you've got a huge dependency on virtual machines, infrastructure as a service, and on-prem data centers, then you're still going to need the technical skills to connect to those data sources. However, if your data sources are like software as a service, which is what Microsoft Dynamics 365 is, or Zero, or many other modern data sources, then again, you're going to be a really good place to adopt Fabric once it's in production. So yeah, so serverless compute. So what actually is that in a nutshell? So it fully separates compute from storage, enabling independent scaling of both the components. Additionally, native stores data in the open Delta Lake Parquet format. So you'll hear that a lot. Delta Lake Parquet format. So and we'll get on to costings a bit later as well. Okay, so the next thing, yeah, so I'll just rattle through these one row at a time. Otherwise, I'll take up too much time. Okay, data warehousing experience provides industry-leading SQL performance and scale. Data engineering experience provides Spark platform with authoring. I'll try and explain what Spark is a bit later as well. Data factory, or it's very similar to Azure Data Factory, which is a similar graphical user interface. If you don't know Data Factory, then there's quite a lot of emphasis on drag and drop, which again is similar to Power Query. Data science enables you to build, deploy, and operationalize machine learning, real-time analytics for observational data, which is collected from various sources such as apps, IoT devices, human interactions, and so many more. And as you know, Power BI is a Microsoft data analytics solution. It's dominant as a visualization tool over the whole space. So I've had gigs where it's AWS is the data lakehouse, and they've asked me to do Power BI because Power BI is far better than the offering from Google or Amazon. So yeah, coming into here now. So as I guess most of you are aware, TSQL, that's Microsoft's extension of structured query language, how you query the data warehouse. Spark is parallel processing framework that supports in-memory processing to boost performance of big data analytics applications. So, we'll be able to leverage and explore and exploit much larger data sets in Fabric than what you can currently do with Power BI. KQL, custom query language, really popular already with Azure administrators, querying log files. You notice the syntax for that is very similar to SQL. Analysis services, I'm not quite sure why that was put there, but essentially analysis services, it's like pretty much legacy because what you can do in Power BI datasets, Power BI Premium, you can do all that now that you used to be able to do in analysis services. So you don't want to be paying for analysis services and paying for Power BI separately. But yeah, Power BI in part grew out from analysis services and Power Pivot. Okay. So yeah, so One Lake. One Lake is a foundation on which all Fabric services are built. So everything now sits on this Delta Parquet format. So it's highly compressed, it's partitioned, and it's got indexing. So how that's going to compare to a highly optimized Synapse SQL server, dedicated pools with distributed processing and materialized views, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm sure you'll know, the majority of you, that when you're actually coming to trial out this and when it's in production, when it's in general availability, and you're thinking about migrating to Fabric, which some of you absolutely will, you'll be doing functionality testing, you'll be doing a lot of performance-based testing as well. Okay, so yeah, so the warehouse. I mean, that's leveraging an analytics, messaging, data integration, business intelligence workload using a SQL endpoint. So some of you will be familiar with SQL. So you're just using that same SQL language to leverage your data warehouse. Likewise, your lakehouse, you've got, very simply, you've got your data warehouse, your data lake combined into one, your lakehouse, and then you can also leverage unstructured data sets and maybe using a language like Python to enable you to do that. So yeah, so there'll need to be a strategic roadmap in how we develop Fabric when you reach that point, or you're actually got an interim architecture, which is quite likely. So it's important that we just go over what the strategic roadmap is for developing reports, particularly Power BI reports. So I typically start with the top 10 things people are worried about, create that into proof of concept, base that training material on my book. So they've got an actual model based on what they know rather than adventure works. So if it's like a financial company, they're going to have measures based on gross profit, cost benefit analysis, etc., rather than adventure work cycles. And then we can develop the Power BI solutions from as a result of the cascade training, and then where the cascade training is based on customized training material. Well, the customized training material, as I say, that's a combination of the Power BI book, and then of course the actual top 10 metrics that's being delivered based upon that. Okay, so yeah, so Power BI is certainly the hub of development of the data platform. So yeah, it's not the hub in terms of the data, it's the hub in terms of the requirements gathering. So that the top level here. Once you got your top 10 KPIs, the board of directors is worried about, articulate that into a report, you cascade trading based upon that, you're in a much stronger place. But with Fabric, the Fabric will be the hub of the requirements gathering, and it'll be the hub of the actual data itself because it contains the data lake and the data lakehouse. See how we're getting on for time. It's in 11 minutes too. So yeah, so why is SAS? Why is software as a service? Why is it important? It's important because essentially when you're working on-prem as an organization, you're responsible for doing a lot more stuff. Okay, so you see the bar here highlighted, the square here highlighted in blue. That's what you're responsible for in software as a service. There's a partial responsibility where it's both colors. Platform as a service, there's more responsibility. Infrastructure as a service, more responsibility still, and on-prem, you're responsible for everything. So this is how software as a service democratizes data, because you're far more focused on analyzing your data, connecting to your devices, managing your accounts and security, and you're far less focused on delivering the applications, etc., etc., etc. So this is an opportunity for me to bang on about certification and Microsoft Learn. So there's some really good quality content on Fabric already in Microsoft Learn, and there's still a significant number of professionals who do Microsoft products every day, develop using Microsoft products every day, but they don't have a Microsoft Learn account. It's really important to shout out that with a Microsoft Learn account, you get really high quality learning material, and you get free sandboxes, free Azure servers to spin up and destroy at your own will. So there's lots and lots of exams and content which are highly relevant to Fabric. So by all means, I think I'll just focus on one of them because we're a little bit low on time. So if you just go on to the data engineering on Microsoft Azure, you can see there's a huge amount of stuff here which is highly, highly relevant to preparing yourself for Fabric. Because what we're going to get to very shortly is how we're going to manage that journey to Fabric, because we can't use it now in production because it's not ready, and when it even is in general availability, you're going to want to test it yourselves in your organization before you productionize it in your organization. So you'll need to, if you're going to prepare the journey towards Fabric now, you'll need to think about, should you stand up Synapse a bit more? And then there's all this free learning material on Synapse. So I'm suggesting an interim architecture here. Obviously, it depends on your business requirements. You might have lots of on-prem data sources, as I said earlier. If you do, then that's a separate challenge, and you'll still need the gateways for that. But as you can see, you've got this data lake, of course, maps to one lake. Pipelines maps to data factory. Your Synapse SQL serverless pools enables you to query data lake directly using T-SQL. And you're going to need a persistent database to store your data warehouse. If it's not huge, then by all means, just use an Azure SQL serverless database that can cope with tens of millions of rows. Please don't be another one of those organizations who stand up Synapse SQL dedicated pools at £250 a month, and when you don't need it. That's happened to me so many times when I've been on site as an independent consultant. So let's do a very quick tour of features. So here we're basically, we've got a standard data flow here, and all you do to create a data lakehouse is by simply create a data flow, and you can see really common, really familiar Power Query editor environment now available, within fabric.com, powerbi.com. And you just simply say, right, well, I want my destination to be a lakehouse, and it'll create the lakehouse for you, essentially. And then when you're browsing the lakehouse, you can see you've got a Power BI table there, and you've got a sample measure there. And here's one of the nice things. Oh, I think I've just go into a query. Yeah. So I'm actually querying a Power BI dataset now using SQL. Okay, so bear in mind it's I'm going to try and refresh it. The bravery of demoing a product that's not yet in GA. Okay, let's see if that works. Yeah, I think it just probably timed out. Okay, so I've just used SQL to query a Power BI dataset, and I think that's pretty neat, to be honest. Okay, there's a bit of flakiness, but you can see where the direction's heading with the general vision of the tool. Just give it one last try before I move on. So I think it was a workflow that I hadn't actually run yet. Yeah. So thinking about the next step. So I showed the example output, and this here, I've got Azure Data Factory on it's a bit small this. I've got Azure Data Factory on the right hand screen, and I've got Fabric Data Factory on the left hand side of the screen, and you can see they look very, very similar indeed. So again, that's quite encouraging. So yeah, so we've just got an example Power BI report in Fabric. And of course, you can edit it online now and edit the model as well. Yeah. So you can define your Spark Compute number of nodes. And I've actually spun up a paid version, the cheapest paid version of Synapse, just to see how it would perform. And because I'm quite careful on just starting it up, shutting it down, if you look at the actual costings, it's it's very reasonable. You look at the cost analysis over the last week or so. So it's just basically pennies per day if you're careful to start the service and stop it when you're not actually using it. Because when it's talking about this £125 per day or month or whatever, it's meaning that yeah, you're going to leave it running essentially, and you don't have to leave it running. Okay, so getting on to the next. Yeah, really, yeah, don't forget the basics. So if you're going into Fabric, then absolutely continue to base your design on a star schema, both for being kind to your users who want to develop their own reports, and then of course, it's good for performance as well. Okay, so just got another small demo, and I'll probably just finish at that. If you want to have a look at the links, then just have a look at the article. So something where we've made some progress is on the version control. So if you're going to have an enterprise environment for a data lakehouse within Fabric, you're going to have lots of versioning. You're going to need a repository, and ideally you need that repository mapping back. So what we've got at the moment is we've got Power BI in DevOps. So you've got the data set and then the report definition here. But it's just a work in progress because there's only the actual Power BI objects that are actually being reported and being stored in the repository, and not the Fabric related objects such as the SQL endpoint, the lakehouse, the notebooks, definitions. So the conclusion is that absolutely Microsoft Fabric is an exciting game changer. It will empower data analysts to extend their tool sets, so lots of learning to do, but you'll get access to stuff a lot more easily, and you won't be banging your head against the desk anywhere near as much. but it's going to take time for this fabric product to be available, to be in general availability, because even though it's just combining lots and lots of different products together, the integration process is still a massive undertaking. But it would be really good if you could be proactive and just ease your way into Fabric by taking the advice I've given, for example, on trying to edge towards an interim architecture. So when Fabric is in GA, you're able to make use of it as soon as possible. Okay, so that's me finished now. Any questions?
Thank you, Kieran. Let me start with a question. So let's say I'm a Power BI developer, I'm starting out, and I use spreadsheets and perhaps a SQL database. How can Fabric help me start working a bit better on the basic level?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is I would ask, where do the spreadsheets come from? Because the chances are there'll be a small element of manual input, but most of those spreadsheets, on average, I would say about 95% plus of the data is it's just an output of another on-prem or another reporting solution. It might be an Oracle legacy system, for example. So whether or not you're using Fabric or Power BI now, and that's a really good question, because it's made me think, yeah, and it's something that I should have put in this article. So that's excellent feedback. Thank you. Is that you've got to think about your data life cycle. So where does the data come from? So that's the first answer to your question, because ultimately you only want to be querying Excel spreadsheets in Power BI if you really have to, if it's genuinely data that doesn't exist anywhere else. The second part of the answer to your question is, yeah, I mean, you can leverage other elements in Fabric. It's much more easy to integrate Python and use Python as an extraction, transform, and loading tool, so you can leverage Python libraries, and also implement an incremental load. And it's quite likely that the incremental load will, in part, only make sense if you're actually querying data from enterprise data sources rather than Excel. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. Any other questions, Daniel?
So I have data factory as a service in Azure, which I can do the pipelines. But what is the use of Fabric coming and again clubbing the data factory pipeline inside the Fabric as a service? It's
Yeah,
the same thing, right?
yeah, it is. It's the same thing, but when you eventually, when Fabric is in GA, I mean, for example, now if you got a Power BI Pro license, you can just go into here. I mean, I've actually disabled it, so I'm not a very good example here. But if I just go into powerbi.com, and you just basically click on Fabric trial, and it gives you a 60-day free trial. And Fabric is just there in an instant, including your data lakehouse, your data factory. But if you were, starting from scratch, and you say to yourself, I want access to an enterprise data loading tool, then you would have to speak to somebody in, your, I'm just trying to bring up it now. You'd have to speak to somebody as like an Azure administrator, and they would have to give you quite high level access, so you could go into all this stuff here and then create your own Azure data factory, your own services. So if you've already got your own data factory, then and you're already working as a data engineer, then I agree you might want to continue as you are. However, thinking about it, you might be wanting to empower people who've traditionally worked as data analysts, and you might want to be saying to them, I would like to empower you to use an enterprise data loading tool, because it might not necessarily be as straightforward giving them access to a data factory. So it's more about democratizing the whole process, because, as I say, the mantra that I keep repeating, you've got to create these services yourself in Azure. And when you do that in a production environment, somebody's got to give you permission to do that. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Kieran. More questions?
Do you still have like fair amount of flexibility in terms of who you provide access to in Fabric then? Or is it just easier to provide?
Well, as I say, when you go into Fabric, everything's there as a default. I don't know whether or not people can like take off access to various bits of it. I suspect they could. I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah,
You've got payroll data,
yeah.
all of a sudden everyone in the company has access to the payroll data.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got row level security as part of Power BI, and absolutely that's going to continue to be a part of Fabric. So you can choose what user has what data. So absolutely, that's still part of the responsibility of software as a service. You still have to decide who's got access to what data. It's always going to be a business decision who gets access to what in terms of data.
All right, take one more. Any takers? All right, that seems tired. Kieran, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Everyone, make sure to keep an eye out on Meetup. We'll be releasing the next event very soon. We have two great speakers, very different topics for next events. We don't have a venue yet, no? Yeah, so that will be confirmed in the Meetup. So make sure to keep an eye out. And thank you very much for coming. We'll see you the next time. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Kieran. Bye.